My name is Ben Melanson, and I'm going to be presenting on a project that my company did with the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and some groups there on the Find It platform. Anyhow, we're a small worker-owned cooperative originally based in the Boston area, and I am now mostly in Minneapolis, and we have people in Denver, Nicaragua, and Mexico. And ex-member we work with all the time in Germany. What we'll be covering is research highlights from the very initial research. There was a very long period of research before this project really kicked off the development, which was really a joy and one of the things I wanted to share here. The initial user testing results after we did build something, and then how we've done this iterative UX of continued improvement, some overall lessons, and what we're working on next. Some top themes will be the challenge of balancing client feedback with user feedback, and have a little bit of strategies on how to make sure user needs are prioritized and not the client's needs. And I do have to say, the first time I presented on this, it was in front of the client, and I said this. I was actually way harsher on the client the first time I presented right in front of them, and the relationship is still good, so I guess mostly I'm saying you can probably do a little bit of pushback and make sure you're prioritizing user needs. What we won't do is much on the technical detail of how we did things, and this talk will not be a model of operating a project efficiently. And so the budget doesn't have to be large, but and it wasn't for this project. But we did have a lot of other advantages going on, mostly with the client willing to engage in the user research themselves, which saved us from doing it, which would not have fit in the project budget. So, but again, as far as aligning client interests with the people who are actually using their site, there's nothing better than the client actually experiencing how people use the site firsthand to teach them the importance. So, people who started to kick this off, Find It Cambridge was born out of a collaborative discussion with a whole bunch of stakeholders. It was really Nancy Tauber, the executive director of the Cambridge Kids Council, and Dr. Leo Bird, director of the Lemon Creative Learning Program at MIT Media Lab, who thought it up and did the initial conversations and found the initial resources, which included bringing in Code for Boston, Code for Boston, the Code for America local chapter, to do some initial research. And so, but the feedback from the community overall highlighted the need for Find It Cambridge to be an easy-to-use, multilingual, single-point portal, one place for people to find whatever they're looking for. So, basic situation is, someone has kids, or they're taking care of someone and they're looking for some kind of activity for them to do. That activity might be offered by the Parks Department, the school department, the libraries, and one of 100 programs for children. And there was no place, and in most cities there isn't one place to find all of these things. So it's very much from the beginning intended to show both public government programs across a number of agencies and actually sort of government levels offering these programs, and private groups, and to get the listing all in one place so people can do it. And people were, a lot of people in the community were engaged and were really interested in building with and not having something just built for them. So who is the site for? The site is for caregivers, which is what we're using to talk about, mostly parents, but anyone taking care of children or, is the primary audience for the site. And so we use the term caregivers to emphasize that. But really, anyone engaging in self-care by looking for activities for themselves are also included. And I'm going to interchangeably say visitors which is anyone going to the website without logging in, and it's going to be presumed without other context that this is the primary audience of people using the site to look for events, programs, places, or organizations. The next key audience is service providers, and these are representatives of organizations and agencies which run programs and services. And then outreach workers is anyone can be volunteer, can be a social work person who is assisting another person or family using the site as a resource. So some cities call people information or referral specialists. And this is another main stakeholder group. Then content editors are usually from the organization running the site, Family Policy Council, and they can edit pages and items. And then site managers are people running it overall. And in this talk, I mostly focus on the caregivers and their experience, with a little bit on the service providers, but some of our latest work has really been getting site managers what they need as far as analytics and statistics, and some of that's how you learn what to do next. So we touch on that a little bit. But the only way that we people who build websites can keep acting like talking to the people who have to use the sites is not what we're supposed to do, is if we don't do it. Because as soon as you talk to someone, you learn just how much you can learn from the people using your stuff. So this project started with research, and it influenced everything. The domain name of the site, the top-level domain, was chosen through user research. Finditcambridge.com, finditcambridge.gov, finditcambridge.org were all on the table, and among, just tested it with people, see how people reacted, asked them what they thought, and people felt that they trusted .org more than .gov. To give sort of relevant results, and slightly more than .com. And that might be changing in Massachusetts, because Boston and Massachusetts are totally overhauled their government websites to be way more useful. Mass.gov and Boston.gov are both major Drupal projects that are taking the same approach of making the site your entryway to the government being from your point of view, rather than divided up by the agencies. So you just go there and search and find it. All right. So, as went over the roles, this is for parents looking for children, and program managers and advisors, and then site administrators. And so the importance of reaching the needs for each type of user separately, and relative importance of each type of user can depend on the phase of the project. So the very initial research phase was looking at the end users. The next phase was really how to make sure this can work for the service providers, because if we couldn't bring them on board to keep their content updated, didn't matter how nice the user experience of the site was for searchers, there wouldn't be anything useful for them to find. All right. So students from Harvard Public School of Health took on this project for a semester-long project, and then Code for Boston evaluated other municipal event sites, and then provided the analysis to Cambridge. The detailed set of personas from this was developed a detailed set of personas of people looking for events, programs, and services, and that these personas were based on Cambridge demographics, and everything was designed with Cambridge residents in mind. And then from this, cross-section of demographics, people were recruited across languages and other socioeconomic status. And then Nancy Tauber, the leader, interviewed 220 service providers herself. And then we began testing their entry into the forums. And so, first lesson is iterate on what someone else has built. There were not actually great examples at this time, but there was Somerville Hub and one in Blanktown in California that were sort of the best models we had to go on. And we already could learn from them that automatic translation without telling people that it was automated was a huge turnoff for people. And this was a real issue because we didn't actually have the budget to have full translation. So one of the first compromises was putting it as a select language Google Translate search really obviously and not doing anything automatic. And then, as part of building on what other people have built, step one, if you're on Drupal, you're already a large way there because Drupal has a lot of accessibility features built in, which is especially important for municipal governments, but iterating on what other people have built, there's a lot to learn from what Drupal has already built in, so the main lesson here is just don't break what Drupal gives you. In the comparative analysis, key points identified was that the other sites looked good at the first thing, but were not that engaging and not mobile friendly. So, just looking at what other people did wrong and trying to get it right. And, last one there, fostering a sense of community among the users. We haven't figured that out either, but, most of the other things we did by getting rid of the calendar in the first place. I think I have a picture of that, but yeah. Did the events as a list was an early usability win, I think, rather than events in a calendar format. So as I was saying about not doing automatic translation, this was the automatic translation to Spanish. It has managed to leave most of the words you would hope it would translate, and translate the words that you wouldn't. So it's managed to translate Mass, which is for Massachusetts, as Massachusetts says a lot of people. And then very weird things it's doing with it actually translated find it as Buscata. So these are pain points that we're planning to fix in a new iteration. It's still iffy on the resources, but we know they can't hire translators to translate all the site content, but the goal is to have the outside of the site cleanly translated by professionals. Use Drupal's translation for that, and then make it really clear if something internally to the site has been translated by machine. And so to do the translation, obviously, but put it right up there that it was done by Google, and you can switch it back real easily. All right. From the research to design. Again, a lot of the point of this presentation is that we've made a lot of changes to the site over the year, but many crucial decisions were made before we configured a single content type. And so the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants used in free software, you're always building on other people, and it really plays to Drupal's strengths when you're standing on two sets of giants: the people who wrote Drupal and and then also a team of people researching the specific needs of their project, and then using someone who can turn that research into design specs and iterate on those before you build anything is a huge thing that a good designer will bring you. So the designer we always work with is Todd Linkner. He's done design with Drupal for 9 years and tons of other stuff. So 297 messages are what he was involved in that I also happen to be CC'd on just for Find It Cambridge just in 2015, and the project didn't start until May of that year. So he was heavily involved in the research and understanding of the project. And he has long argued for a more active role of the designer to be responsible for explicitly communicating the design system to both clients and developers, and releasing developers from having to interpret the design, fill in the gaps, but to provide the implementing full designs, allow the developers to focus on implementing the design system and not interpreting the design. And we got most of the way with this one. And so that allows the developers to focus on the invisible deliverables, performance, making the site maintainable, the admin tools, accessibility, SEO. So new sites, so no content for the design to work with. And so We solicited content using a variety of methods. We used gather content, and we used Google Forms. Google Forms, the way it was set up, was too freeform the first time. So the first sort of round of gathering content didn't give the designer the structured data that he needed to create these kind of mockups. But that's sort of, it's a good iteration, going from like sort of the open form, people enter in whatever they think for categories and program types and dates and times and ages served and all of that, and then it was refined into more structured content where people had to select a category, select from the age range, select grades served. And this is all being done, in person with people, so there's still immediate learning when someone says, well, the category I have isn't here, it could be added. But first step was getting in structured data. And this can also be done first right off with Drupal, which is the way I would prefer to do it. Because Drupal can spin up the forms as easily as anything. And then you have the content there, but you can also export it as in YAML. And that was brought into a very simple design system. So anyway, this is what happened when you initially asked people. They just filled in tons of stuff, and then it was Contentful that we actually used to get a more structured select things going in. So that's what we did without having to even spin up a Drupal site, just to get the data in there and then get enough data to design a theme. And so it's this driving force is that sharing ideas between content design and development. So we're ending up with a design system that is a structured system of components that can interact in a relationship to one another, exactly like it's going to have on the live site. So Todd doesn't concern himself with nuanced differences between wireframe and prototype. It's just an abstract document. A wireframe can be abstract, not easily understood. IA document's the same. If we can turn the wireframe into an unpolished prototype to iterate on, then it's sort of sketching in code and content at the same time and giving people the experience. And so we brought this, and so we brought the wireframes to group and had them, paper wireframes, and also, just try it out paper, like see what you're going to do in a large group, sort of focus groupy, which isn't the best way to get data, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But also, user testing one-on-one with the wireframe, like clicking through clickable wireframes. And then the other part that Todd's filling in is, the design system as elements one by one, but the key is the interaction between elements. So the basic point is showing is more powerful than telling. Clients will have bias from their previous website and from their work and thinking they have to translate everything into visual terms to talk to a designer, and breaking out of that and making sure that the focus is on the content and the experience, and that we all have the time to experience users is key. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you call it wireframe or prototype. The purpose of a wireframe or prototype is to learn from the design while it's being processed. And so it was the static site generator Jekyll that was used to develop wireframes that were living prototypes with code. And Jekyll is pretty good at doing structured content, in a similar way to Drupal is. Of course, Jekyll is a static site, but the content can be structured. And so this is after the sort of wireframe prototype phase, the very first mock-ups, intentionally without color, so that the focus is on the use and interaction and not on the what's making it pretty. And after one final test here, it's time for the handoff to development. Development often, so we came in with that fortunate situation of all this work being done, and then development can still feel really slow compared to design, and just covered the huge amount of work that went into the design. But at least the design is automatically getting regular feedback, and then development is a bit slower. So the rest of this presentation is about how to intentionally make sure you're getting feedback throughout the life cycle of the project. Getting feedback from users, so you listen, learn, and loop that back into your knowledge. We started out with an installation profile that brought in some of the content that we had solicited and that Todd had structured or used to define the structure of the site. And I think this is also a really key thing that we need to do with more projects, is you don't have to wait for the client to enter content. And that you can be willing to throw out the whole information architecture without throwing away any of the hard-earned content. So making sure the content can be imported in, exported out. And so we've done this with the migrate module, so that we can bring in information from YAML or from CSV, and just round trip it. So we're not afraid to tear it down and start over again. Which I think is, can add a little bit extra flexibility to those early stages. Because as much as you try to do all that testing, before you start building, you don't want to feel that you can't continue to change, especially in the early stages. Other thing is that early deployment readiness and iterations doesn't mean that your client is your tester. You still want to be doing the initial set of testing in-house, and we also made some use of BHAT when not enough to, test basic behaviors. So, the best way to communicate your design vision to developer, and what Todd gave us, was HTML and CSS. And so we were taking HTML and CSS and applying it to Drupal. And so we were able to very quickly, develop, what the initial design phase had come up with. And one of the first challenges that had not been cleaned up in the initial design phase was this use of two concepts at once for age, basically. But where what this is basically is exposing the content modeling that the service providers needed to know to caregivers. So service providers are some of them serve ages, some of them are we serve these grades, and they just think of it in those terms. And so so this is mostly done with training the service providers to whichever one was their primary to translate it into something else. But our initial thing, and I think this is actually a good way to start, is we're exposing the client modeling concepts to our clients and to users. But we did ultimately simplify to just focus on age after further user testing, which we'll get to. So with testing, it showed that parents were more comfortable thinking about the age of their child than the grade of their child. And especially for summer activities, which is one of the main uses for the site, there was way less confusion. So this is something that came in, this is just 7 or 8 parents that Cambridge took the initial version of the site to, and we got that feedback pretty quickly. And so going by age, people were not like, well, I'm thinking about the grade that my child was in or the child is going to be. And so we simplified it. And so each program has their own age and grade eligibility criteria. So a program might offer something for 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds, and it would come up in both the 5 to 10 and 11 to 13 age categories here. And again, right now, the work of having age and grade both recorded is just put entirely on service providers. And this is possible because Cambridge has a full-time staff person on Find It to sort of help service providers learn how to fill out their forms. They have a pretty hefty form to go through, but they get help and they can copy programs. One of the early features added was the ability to copy a program node so that they didn't have to fill everything out from scratch. That was, it's this balance between trying to make sure we're making it really easy for caregivers while not making life too difficult for the service providers. Instead of a user profile page when the service provider logged in, we're giving them a dashboard. Because on this site, the profile page is of no relevance, and so we made a customized dashboard with the key actions that service providers need to take on the site: creating new content, updating past content, and answering questions about the site. Other big thing we did for service providers: you ever throw something away or delete something and think immediately, man, terrible mistake. And you want to dive into the garbage chute or the digital equivalent and stop it from being lost forever somehow? Well, with dozens of service providers managing content on the site, mistakes were bound to happen. The worst case scenario is accidentally deleting a program node which has 15 categories checked off, 6 ages, 7 or 3 grades, and lots of description and uploaded image and everything else. And it was bad. To protect against that, we used the kill file module, so soft delete, allowing their recovery if needed. Foreshadowing, the ease of recovering something from deleting made us use delete too often. But anyhow, just for where we are right now, a huge improvement for the service providers to know that to be able to have content restored for them by site managers is the way it's done. But we gave them the message that they can get someone else to delete stuff for them. So Kaizen continuous improvement is probably overselling it a little bit, but this continuous improvement. There's a pause in a moment and do user testing. User testing is sometimes done in a computer lab. Sometimes that's pretty artificial, but in our case, it was right on target. Anyhow, most regular improvements fall into the category of closing the gap between a person's expectations, using a site, and what the site actually delivers. And so, this has a little bit of an unbalance in that power users are the ones who have more of an expectation and are more able to express it. And so a lot of our early improvements, I think, were driven by power users. So power users reported not finding organizations with terms they expected, specifically when searching for words that were in the title or description of programs that the organization offered, but it wasn't on the organization itself. And vice versa, when people would search for something, a program, and would not find it because the key terms were only in the organization. So one early change to meet the expectation of these power users, and this is definitely a good change because it benefited everybody, is that we included, so I should make clear that organizations have associated programs. So the service provider has one page where they just describe the organization so that when you're in a specific program, you can go to the organization and see the other programs they offer, or you can get to the organization and see their programs. But both, especially power users, but regular users also, would be confused as why they weren't finding a program searching for some word associated with the organization. and vice versa, not finding the organization and searching for a word with the program. So we just included both in their search engine indexes. We just said, node reference, include everything when indexing the search, when indexing the content for the purposes of search, so that if, I should have put the examples in here, but yeah, it's like, it's a museum organization, and then they don't actually put the word museum in their program, now it will still come up in search because it's there. So if they just called it like, doing things in the woods because that's what the program actually is, but it was offered by a museum and some people know that, and they're not like, well, how am I not finding the museum woods program? Now they will because it's tied in. And then go to where your users are. And in this case, doing user testing with people in the computer lab of a public library was a perfect common use case for our users. So we had a little bit of an edge up. A lot of the time it's like, how are people regularly going to be using something? For certain specialized sites, your users may not be hard to reach physically. Here we could just bring people into computer lab, and it was a realistic use because a lot of the target audience is going to be using the site from public computers in the library. But then the other standard way of doing user research is you grab someone off the street, and for a site like this, again, it's a representative sample, and ask them to find it on their own phone in a cafe, which is the classic lean user testing. And so the main point is you learn so much from talking to people, from seeing them try to use the site, that you just need like 5 people to have enough stuff to work on for like 3 months. So first thing we learned is the computers in the library, Cambridge Library, used Internet Explorer 11 on Windows 7 Professional, which was horrible. But this is all part of going to where your users are. And the other thing we learned was that half the city has no idea where August is, or Wellington Harrington, or if Wellington Harrington is one neighborhood or 2, or why neighborhood 9 and area 2 are like just names of neighborhoods. But this is Cambridge, Massachusetts. And so, what we learned was from some first testing was that just the names of neighborhoods, which is how we had, because of the service provider's needs, decided to organize the content. Like, the service providers, map themselves pretty well to neighborhoods. Like, we serve these 3 neighborhoods. But regular residents didn't necessarily have that sense. Like, there weren't, 3 or 4 of the neighborhoods had a strong sense of like, this is my neighborhood name, and the rest were just like, I'm in Cambridge, I don't know. And then if you're just, need to know what's the next one over, you don't know it. So we gave a map, and it's an example of how most decisions made with the user experience in mind will entail a whole lot of work that isn't necessarily directly seen. So to actually implement the map so that the SVG outlines would map to places. This is just a piece of the code. But next big lesson, which was observed from just watching that, is out-of-date information about events and programs will drive people away super fast. And this is actually something we learned from looking at other examples, and talking to people who'd run other hubs. So first thing we did to try to address this is add a prominent-ish, large anyway, report as outdated as inaccurate. There's a lot of testing we're doing to figure out how to change that. We're probably going, and the other thing we did was, added the last updated date so people can just know. And so a lot of our current research, quick user research, just doing mockups and showing people, is figuring out, how to make sure that the report is outdated or inaccurate isn't, actually one problem right now is it's actually more visible to people in our tests than the add to calendar link. So we're making the add to calendar more visible, and we're trying to make the report as outdated and inaccurate less severe. And so we're thinking that maybe even the last updated on, and the report might move to the bottom. Just other thing we changed. Don't ever use collapsed accordions. It's just ever. Like, you don't need to do the user research to know that way too many people are gonna miss stuff in there. So, I mean, we switched these to expanded immediately, very quickly, and we'll probably remove them pretty soon. Yeah.
Do you, on the site, do your events expire automatically?
Yes. Yes.
When do they expire automatically? The day after, the day of?
I forget what it is now. The proposal now is going to be 2 days. And I'll get to it in a little bit, but right now, by expiring, we just delete things, or unpublish things. We just take it off the site entirely. So event is basically immediately. A program, if it hasn't been updated but in a year, is taken off the site, and an organization, if it hasn't been updated in 2 years, is taken off the site.
You decided that with your client, those rules?
Yeah. I mean, they're leading most of this, and I'm going to get back to that because this is the foreshadowing about deleting things a bit too easily. And then, the other thing you learn when you actually put things in front of people in a real environment on a mobile network and a phone is that performance is part of the user experience, and sometimes that gets pushed to the side for getting features there. But if you and the client actually see people wait for something to load, performance goes right up there in the priority. This site, we kept it pretty lightweight. Wasn't too huge an issue there. But anyhow, how fast content loads is a huge part of visitor experience. And then the keeping user testing as an integral part of this process. So in this case, it was literally what we're trying to make sure we listen to the citizenry, since that was the ultimate user of the site, more than the client. And I did, again, say this directly in front of our client. And so no matter how awesome your clients are, if they want the site to be the best it can be for the people the site is for, both you and the client need the end users to always be a part of the loop where we listen and learn and iterate on that, and then bring the development team into that. Categories are a major aspect of the site, and when initially building the site, we didn't question what was handed to us as far as categories. It had been done with an amount of impressive research, but ideally, after the many service providers had filled in their programs and events and their feedback had been taken into account for the categories, we as the developers of the site would have taken that and seen how it made sense to caregivers. And we did, just like 3 years into the process and not right away. It was cool things. Like, there was one category called youth enrichment and activities. Like, that's the whole purpose of the site. Like, that's everything. And so we did, we're doing this with the client always, and we looked up, okay, what was tagged with youth enrichment activities that wasn't tagged with anything else. And there was just one item that was actually all we fit into is youth enrichment activities. And so that's like an outlier. It's like, okay, you address that and you figure out what category it really should be in. And they did that, and we deleted that category. And in general, this is undergoing a major process of overhaul. So, Cambridge conducted, for figuring out what the categories could be, Cambridge conducted a card sorting exercise with representative site users at the library. And then, again, this is user research done by our client, which is amazing. We reviewed the results of that and came up with sort of 3 approaches for them to consider. And then we modified a version of that approach. And so these are not yet live on the site. This is coming to an upgrade soon. And then some of the specific terms we are seeking further user feedback on. So the main lessons learned is that people think of categories either as services or activities. So they just there's a full bifurcation there that we had tried to basically use the same category listing for programs and events, and that's wasn't mapping to how people thought of them. So categories taxonomy is splitting, and most people, and this was interesting in the testing, felt weird and singled out by taxonomy built around identity, like the immigrant, LGBTQ, parent, low income. So a lot of those audience-specific terms sort of, weird people out. So we've been trying to downplay that in the updated category list. Remove what isn't used as part of your iteration. Like I mentioned, the youth services catch-all category. But we also reviewed the fields being used on the program and event nodes, and based on user feedback and analytics, how many service providers actually filled in. So this is sort of internal site analytics. So we just did a database lookup, and it'd be really cool if there are more general tools for inspecting how content on your site is being used. So anyone's interested in that, we'd be interested in working on that. But we looked at how many nodes had values for certain fields, and we identified fields that weren't being used either by service providers or by users, or were confusing to caregivers or service providers, and we changed them. And so we sort of refined our technical architecture based on that. So very often your primary audience is not one that will most naturally be able to get feedback to you. So instead, the people using the site regularly who know how to reach you, your clients partners, are going to keep using the site and telling you about things. And that's good, you want that to keep happening, and if that's not happening, you want to open up lines of communication, pursue testing, but it's who the site is really for that's sometimes going to be the last ones that you talk to. And then there's one other role which we keep going back and forth about whether we should add, and I'll get to that in a minute. So the main tool we have for seeing how it's working for caregivers is to actually go out and do user testing, have people use the site, watch them. You learn so much from that. We're going to cover a little bit more of that. And the other is heat maps. And then there's analytics, and also analytics, which needs to be set up better, but I can talk about that later, like after the session. So, content editors preferred the delete workflow, as did site managers. It felt very clean to delete something, especially knowing that if you needed to, you could get it back again. And site managers even wanted content deleted automatically when it was out of date, as we just talked about. And that's a good experience for caregivers also, not finding obsolete programs or events, which again, in every other sort of find thing activities to do, portals that we looked at, was a huge problem. There's just, all you find is 3-year-old events. And we totally do not want to do that. And we have the safety feature being able to restore delete that in, so all good, everyone happy, just delete stuff right away. This is where we think of that, like, one more user role. Like, maybe we should be writing user stories for, like, and a search engine can do this. So don't forget your robots. Not having a huge base of already indexed content is hurting the search engine rank. The site was launched with a big publicity push, and that's still helping it have pretty strong direct traffic. But other government and community resource sites are driving very little traffic, so SEO is important to this site as it is to almost every site. And of course, if your SEO is so bad you're not getting an organic search, that's all the more reason to work on it. So most of the stuff coming in for the organic search, which is the big one there, is stuff like Find at Cambridge, and that's people just typing it. There's a reason browsers have merged the address bar with the search bar. But there's still a lot of stuff coming in, like there's a program This Way Ahead put on by the Cambridge Housing Authority that doesn't have really its own homepage, so the only way people find it is on Find at Cambridge. It has a couple mentions on the Cambridge Housing Authority site, but that's all. And then other search terms coming in are Cambridge Youth Soccer, MIT Spark program for middle schoolers, and the names of dozens of parks. So just, since 2014, your regular analytics and even Google Analytics won't tell you what search terms are coming to your site. So if you want to know, set up Google Search Console Webmaster Tools as quickly as possible, and then you'll get the information from Google on some of the top terms. It's not the same as seeing the refer information from other sites, but Google isn't passing it on at all, and that's 95% of your search traffic. So 95% of your search traffic in Google Analytics just says no search terms provided, because Google isn't passing it on to itself. It's keeping it secret. So like if you pay for ads, you get that information, but you get good enough info for sort of broad level search engine improvement from looking at your Google Search Console. So what was not showing up was any events. So because we're automatically deleting them, we're not ranking for any events whatsoever that we can see in Google Search Console. And it's not surprising given that we're deleting events as soon as they're done. Just a quick aside, the names of dozens of parks sort of being in the search results helped confirm something that user testing had brought up, which is that we needed another category. So we had programs, events, and organizations, and we created a category of place, because soccer, this field, this recreation center, this everything else didn't really fit into anything perfectly. So we're adding a new place, and that was sort of confirmed by looking at the search terms coming in. So definitely analytics tools. Google Search Console is another place to look for what you need to iterate on. So we're deleting content and missing out on what could be a lot more search engine traffic. But we still need to make it really obvious when something is outdated. So I'm thinking, not propose this to the client yet, but I'm thinking we can change the page background color to the old yellow newspapers and use an old-fashioned wanted poster font, and it'll be unmistakable that this is an out-of-date event. Anyhow, we have not put any of this through the design process yet. But the just the point is that we learned something from looking at our analytics that we're losing out on people who would be searching for an event, or who got told about an event last year and they have it bookmarked or in their email or in their browser history, and they try to go back to it, and they're going to get a page not found. So the goal is to give them something that's really clear is outdated and still there. And of course, the main thing we're going to do is exclude all outdated items from search. So basically, it was sort of a technical shortcut that was sort of proposed by the client, and we just went along with it. If something's no longer up to date, just unpublish it. And for everyone you're actually testing, that's not a problem. But if you look at the invisible people, you look at the analytics, you look at the 404 results, you look at the where your search engine traffic is coming from, you can see the need for that. Robots are sort of a stand-in for hard to measure things, like people getting to the site from links and email and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I'd note about categories is that this is something I've just learned from experience, is that if you have an other category, you're probably doing it wrong, because they always fit into something, even if it's just special events or something like that. If you have an other category, nobody ever opens it. Not because nobody wants, what's other? It's just I want an other.
Yeah. That's a good point. And, anyhow, we haven't rolled out the categories yet, but it's going to be a bit of an impact on the changed categories. It's going to be a bit of an impact on service providers, because again, the last set of categories was basically come up with service providers, so they were comfortable with it. And now we're changing it to make it fit what users expect. And there's going to be this tension again, now service providers are going to be this doesn't mean anything to me. So we're going to probably have more words for service providers so they can understand the category better, and we may give them an other category that we don't show the regular users so that they can be like, but it's really this, and then we can, because we're not doing everything in person with service providers anymore, someone in Find It staff can be like, okay, you think that's a special category, but here's why it really fits in there. Yeah.
So your client is finding Cambridge,
Yeah.
but up to a certain point you work with all the providers?
So Find It Cambridge has a full-time staff person who works with the providers. So we've only interacted on occasion when brought in for like some of the initial before kickoff, when they brought in lots of service providers to look at how the site worked and to talk about what kind of data they're willing to provide and able to provide. We get to meet some of them then, but mostly we don't have a direct relationship with service providers. We've more often been able to be involved in the user testing, like at the user testing in the library. And then that's testing the caregivers, how just regular people in the community are going to use the site, how it works for them. More mistakes. What could have been done better? The user research could have been way more efficient. So essentially, way too much user research was front-loaded. Like they basically did like a year and a half of like talking to people, and a huge amount of information that the designer did a heroic job of integrating, but the iterating more, like learn something, make a prototype, learn some more, and make a prototype, probably could have gotten us a lot farther. And then changes should have been disallowed until user testing. A few too many changes were driven by the client or the project manager. Leo was acting as project manager. Their thoughts, which might have been good, but weren't tested. So some things were done and then undone. So again, they're mostly things that could have been done more efficiently. So using heat maps to spot your mistakes. And a lot of times, again, like if you just click through the site or you see someone go through the site, you're going to see the same mistakes. But a heat map is great because it gives you a visual picture of the mistake that you can show other people. So using hotjar.com for heat maps, they only give you 3 free heat maps, so we have like 50, so we're paying for it. But if you just do a heat map on just a couple pages, you can get a lot of value out of it. So I do recommend you do it. It's really easy to add, and there's a fair number of options out there for heat maps. I'll give you some things. So
heatmaps.com?
Hotjar.com.
Hotjar.com.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I'm gonna, unfortunately, usually I have all of the links all set up, but there's a link at the end of this presentation, which I'm gonna put every link that I talk about on the site there. Right now it's got like 5 of them, and it will have a lot more after I present my second talk right after this one. So it's just, this is badly done, but you have to click filter results for things to change. So here are people, and this is a small sample. This is, I'm using a heat map that was new and has a small sample because it illustrates it more obviously, but here's someone who's got 12 clicks up here without ever clicking the one thing that will actually cause the age and category and location and cost filters to apply.
Because most sites don't operate that way.
Yeah, and none should. Although, yeah, it says a major fail. And again, this was actually observed with user testing also, because it's one of the first things you see is like people not clicking it right away, not seeing why the thing didn't take effect. So one of the major things doing the rebuild is making it a real faceted search with immediate results. Just one reason why this is not just as bad as you would think is because a lot of people, like we have other heat maps where there's like 100 visits and no one even looks at that at all. I picked one category that happened to have someone click on a lot to illustrate this problem, but because most people are searching first or clicking on one of the age categories in the beginning and then scrolling, they're getting that immediate faceted experience, but once you're here, like, this just doesn't work well enough in a couple of ways. But one interesting thing is, having cost there was that talking to people, everyone wanted to find, was like, I want to be able to find the free events. But talking to service providers, we learned that it was sort of iffy. It was sort of a gray area. Is that most events, most programs, people could get a subsidy for. So it wouldn't be listed as free, but it had subsidies available. So we did make the cost like free or subsidy available as the main thing, but mostly we wanted to discourage people from like filtering on costs right away. So we, age is the most emphasized filter, and then category, and then location costs are pushed down.
On that events link,
Yeah.
you select that and then go back up and do the filtering.
It's bad. Yeah. So I mean, these are becoming facets, and also it's going to include everything. So it's going to include everything, and then you can choose to filter by events or organizations or places. And we're probably going to throw just regular pages in here also, just because there's that one big bar of search which we want to emphasize more. Another thing that's happening in user testing and in the heat map is that people are missing the giant search bar. So the search bar needs to get even bigger and a little bit lower on the site, and basically more integrated with the filters. So we're doing a lot of cool, wireframes right now and I'm going to show one later, even though I'm only showing to point out the mistake in that one too. But about how we're integrating the search and the filters all into one thing.
Maybe if the label said apply filter.
Yeah, which one?
Yeah.
But we should at least, we could have fixed this with a line of JavaScript a while ago. And so this is why it's like, okay, doing heat maps now, this helps really show people, because I'll read from, 1 second, I'll sort of circle back to this. And so we knew that faceted search had to be taken action immediately. We knew it, but does it help to have an image like this, to have the impetus to put the funding towards it? Absolutely. So people on mobile devices clicking the filter results button and sort by relevance buttons all the time is because that was what was there. That's what they could see on their phone. It's like, well, I gotta press something if I want something to happen. Again, this is I'm cherry picking heat maps that exaggerate this problem. If you look at a heat map that has 1,000 or 2,000 results, this doesn't jump out at you like that. But it's the problem is real. The problem is there, and again, it's one that also confirmed when people use the devices, but we're not photographing people as they're using their phone, and the heat map gives you a way of doing that.
The use of the key thing, it's in the context. Mobile users are used to that. Yeah.
Well, the main problem here is we're not showing the results right away. We need to push the filters off a little bit so that people can start to see the results. And this is going to be hard to do. So another mistake, and it'll illustrate a couple of the other mistakes, was client put together a 6-page usability study and only got around to testing on one person. So again, doing a little bit too much preparation, and the usability study is good. I think I can link to it, but it's really good about introducing who you are. Yes, I'm someone with a stake in the site, but you won't hurt my feelings when you tell me things are wrong. This is testing the site, not you. All the things you should do to do user testing. But you don't need to come up with 6 pages of questions. And again, this is not something that you give to someone and fill out. This is something that's used as a guide by someone who's saying, can you please try to use the site to do something. But here are the notes from the one person they did try. She used her iPhone. I asked her to find swimming for her daughter. She said my daughter's a teenager, so she went to the 14 to 18 box. And that's another thing. It's going to be hard to design user tests to get at this, but are we privileging age too much. Because it's the main entry into the site now, and like, is that actually like relevant for swimming? Let's loop back around to that too. She scrolled down, didn't see anything, so she went to filter by category, clicked on sports and recreations. She didn't click on filter results for a bit, then she did. And here are the questions like, was the tester actually like accidentally prompting the person to do that, or did they find it themselves? So like, that's what was shown 2 heat maps ago of failing to click on that filter results, was seen in user testing, but didn't jump out at as the key thing that needed to be fixed. She scrolled down until she found War Memorial Recreation Center because she already knew they had a pool, so she clicked on it. And she said she'd look for the website or go to the brochure. She didn't notice the link to the website. She was expecting to see an icon, like the Twitter or Facebook icon, to sort of signify that was a website. So that, again, this is just one person, and you get all this insight. And she said she didn't notice the search bar at the top. And when it was pointed out after the session, she's like, oh, I totally would have used that if she'd seen it. And she didn't use the directory and didn't notice the events or organizations when she did the site search. And this is the client note. It is interesting how much you can learn, how you can learn so much from watching someone go through the process. It took about 2 minutes. So many of our, looping back to, someone's looking for swimming. Prior, they would not have had a problem finding anything, because many of our tweets have been about increasing the relevance of results. But this constantly has to be rethought and retested. So we removed all ages items to increase relevance, because the problem was that all items, something that was for all ages was basically spamming all the results all the time. And so the example was water parks. There's a surprising number of water play parks in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But they just, because they're for everyone, they're all ages. They would be suggested all the time. February, like, here's 3 water parks. And it just wasn't serving people well. And so I thought of it on a rainy day, like, we do weather-dependent ranking of activities. That'd be amazing. Haven't done any of that. So the quick fix was just to, and so I really do think we could do season-dependent ranking boosts. So that's something that we're looking at for the redesign, the revamp for Drupal 8. Water parks shouldn't be the first thing shown to you in January. And so we can try to generally increase relevant results. And, and here it's like, I said, look at what other people are doing. Well, you look at what, Google and Facebook and Amazon are doing, anything that's visited by millions of people and has huge user research teams, so you can look at that for how things interact and stuff like that, but also for the types of things that are useful to people. And so I hate to go the route of that, but recommended content based on how many other people are visiting would help a lot. Because in general, what we're learning from the user research is that people are often just going to find something more like, they don't know for sure what they're looking for. Like, they actually would help from having things pushed to them, like, this is an event that's popular, this is that. And so, bringing that kind of thing in. Sorry. Anyhow, the other thing, the better fix for this, instead of just, taking out basically like the quick fix that our client did for keeping water parks from spamming every result, was to just unclick the ages from the water parks. So that means they wouldn't show up when you click for a teenager, like that woman did. So like, we basically made it so only if you searched for like water or pool or swimming would you get these results. And then the alternative, which we're implementing, is that provide the most relevant results first. So if someone is searching for, an age range, show the programs and events that most narrowly target that age range first, and then show the things that have a more expansive age range later. So that's sort of a compromise of trying to give relevant results without taking away the fact that water parks really are all ages. So right now, and the other possible solution would be just to let people know, like when we've excluded a huge number of programs that were not specific to the requested age range, and then do you want to include all age programs? But pretty sure with the redesign we're going to be moving towards just automatically doing the prioritization and not just sort of acknowledging that, like, we're not showing you all ages because you had an age filter applied. And again, it's pretty easy to reach our people. So this one hasn't quite happened yet. Well, it was about to happen. So letting new user testing override old learning, and the end is preserve knowledge. Like as we go through this, I keep thinking like, we haven't had like new user research directly cause us to undo things that old user research had us do really yet. It's more been like, the tension between service providers and caregivers and stuff like that. But right here, this is one of the possible redesigns for how the filtering is going to work. Too hard to figure out logos, but it's events, organizations, programs, and places. As facets still across the top in this design, probably we'll make all facets more similar and put it on the side. But this little thing right here, doing the age as a slider, that was the first thing that was tried. Doesn't work. Because people, to do an age as a slider, you actually have to select 2 points. You have to select the beginning of the range and the end if you want to get the range. So it just, and especially on mobile, like this is just not a good experience. It's much easier for people to check a bunch, check 2 boxes for their age range. Anyhow, so I just wanted to show like, yep, our design almost moved us back to repeating a mistake that we figured out a while ago. And I don't know the solution to that except to keep a really good, keeping all of our issues there so you can search and see what the conclusions were. But yeah, trying to have this cumulative knowledge is hard. So it's right now it's still, even though it's written down, it's still like really in people's heads when someone says, hey, we've done that before. I've seen that before and it didn't work. But drawing things are good. So what was confusing about the search experience, people were not clicking the filter button, tabs are ignored. We did a comparative analysis of how other sites are handling search for large data sites and what could work for us and what to avoid, and then sketched out some different scenarios, and this being one of them. All right. Introducing more use cases is sort of serve several audiences at once. Curated listings of things has been a big one that we're looking at introducing now. It's of interest to a lot of service providers who want to categorize several of their programs together or get it in a group with programs that other people offer. And it gives a easier thing for another entry into the site. So right now it's just by age, and if we can have a collection of topics, and this will also be a sort of manual way to fix the problem with like seasonal things and promoting things throughout. It's like, if we can have a summer activities collection that gives people an easy way in, and it's easy for the site administrators to change things over time. So that was a plan from the very beginning, and it was dropped due to sort of budget things, and it's coming back now, which is exciting. All right. And so yeah, again, on the finding events, we having everything in one place in one thing and sort of prioritizing the events that are coming up most soon is sort of our plan right now. Because right now we have events listed on the homepage, but not in a really exciting format. So if we have things in their usual search result format right on the homepage with events sort of prioritized, we'll probably find it there best, and possibly bring popularity of other people visiting it into the relevance of things. And then there's so many quick improvements. So yeah, it's like anyhow. I mean, I think this has already been slightly improved, but like that's not a good, like none of this is best practices for time. Like drop the zeros if they're not needed. Like condense it and don't have like everything prefaced with something like neighborhood isn't needed. People can recognize the neighborhood. This is sort of a heuristic thing. Like you're less likely to get feedback from regular people on these things, but like taking a critical eye as a professional can do a lot of
What
things.
were the best practices for the dates?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
or the times, was it?
I mean, the time's just like if it's 7 p.m. exactly, like you can drop the zeros. I mean, it takes a bit more programming, but it just makes things a lot more readable to drop as much visual noise as you can. So something that's not communicating, like the leading zero, you know, it's not communicating anything. Like if it were not PM, like you could have leading zero, but having leading zero, anyhow. It's just all these tiny little things that you just have to look at again because you just did whatever the default date format was the first time, and it's like not until you take a critical eye back to it that you do it.
That's why I want to get into feature creep, but on the previous slide,
Yeah.
on the location, no suggestion for a map there.
Yeah. Oh God, that's high. Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's got to be clickable. And the plan is to do a thumbnail of the map and bring mapping total. But so it's funny because we sort of maps were early built in, and as because everyone who wants one of these like portals, like they want a map right on the front page. That tested terribly. Like we want to bring it back as an alternative way for people to find things once we have this better filtering, and definitely like to give people a visual sense of where things are. And it does. Pretty sure it's already clicking out to. No, maybe that's just a feature that's in progress right now. Just clicking the address and getting to Google Maps or some other mapping service. So no matter how exhaustive in planning the prototyping, readjustments or requests will change. Just a couple inspirational quotations. No plan survives contact with the enemy. And we've met the enemy and he is us. We have had a couple clients where we've had repeated rounds of changes, not major ones, but they add up deep into the implementation process before the site has been used by its intended audience. And so we're all for iterating and being able to incorporate changes, but it's much better if the changes don't come from clients changing their mind, but come from actually learning from the people who need to use the site. And the enemy within, part of the phrase which will be adopted by fascist soon, is our clients and ourselves. So it's next, find it platform. We're making continued investment in iterative UX and making it more affordable, we hope, by building a platform, talking to Minneapolis and St. Paul and some suburbs out in Minnesota about bringing the platform there because Cambridge has open sourced this from the beginning. Well, that was the original intent. Leo Bird put that in the original contract, and it was open source until another developer that Leo was working with committed a secret API key to the repository, and that was quickly not made public anymore. But we're going to do a proper job in bringing it to Drupal 8 of making this a really open, free software platform, moving all the issues to a public issue queue. So all of our learning is there for ourselves and anyone else who comes along. And just moving it to a way that where we can take the learning from Cambridge and help give other places a head start, and then bring the things that there's and then figure out how to make things that are configurable, that need to be configurable per city, just there. So it's really cool stuff that we're looking at, like being able to map. So basically getting the most out of this faceted search meant when someone puts in a regular text term, they should go to the fast. So if someone puts in the main search bar, like I'm looking for, just searches for like, kindergarten, like it should be mapped to the faceted search for that grade, rather than just doing a full text search for that grade. So mapping search terms, things, and that's something that is going to be different for each city. So it's a need of Cambridge that we're generalizing. And whatever we do, whether we partner with a dozen cities to find it a platform powering the fun and learning daily life of people far and near, we're going to keep on iterating with Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it's a lot to chew on. When you open up your own projects and iteratively start improving the experience, take inspiration from this Cambridge rabbit and just bite off something and start chewing. Thank you. Thank you for staying. I think I'm over. Easiest to reach by email and sorry, that's the link that I'll put resources for the talk at. Thank you. Yeah.
The events that get unpublished, can people behind the scenes, like the organization, still see them?
Yes.
And then inform them or use the content?
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, so try that continuity by keeping it on the site, keeping it out of search results, making it very obvious that it's obsolete. But then, when there isn't a new event that replaces it, or if it becomes relevant again, like should the same. So that's what we have to figure out. But definitely, should be some way, like if someone goes back to the old event and there's a new one that's of a similar type, they should be able to get there. So we don't know if we want to do that automated, where it's just like, this event is out of date. Here's similar ones you may be interested in. Put that front and center, or combination of automated and allowing people just to like say what the new event is, or just like redirect to the new event if the organization really has a replacement. So
In our system, we have an old event that it is still findable in search and comes up with a background highlighted. This is for archival purposes.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Because people wanted their old events, they wanted to report on that stuff, but they didn't. And not everybody had the back end stuff. There's no search it, find their stuff by setting the date range back. You can see how many Title IX events did we do last year.
Yeah. And that's where because we're trying to make the facet search experience really fantastic, and they were like, so do we have a thing there where it's like you can check include obsolete, outdated stuff that's available to everybody, or do we make that sort of something you have to be logged in as a service provider to access? So it's and that's sort of so way down on the page that it's hardly going to show up in the user testing, hardly going to show up in the heat maps. Does it matter, or is every extra interface that people don't need on the page just a little bit too much? So mostly I think buried facets are okay, but so do the 99% of the facets are you're filtering them, and then this would be a reversal, automatically checked, and you have to
Do all your organizations have to put stuff in manually, or does anybody work kind of API?
No, we do bring in everything from the libraries automatically in Cambridge, and we're working with MIT. They use an API, a company called Localist. That's the latest API we're integrating with. But that's huge. Everyone wants to integrate if possible, and we are happy to do it. If something has an API, we will implement it. I think our current bane for the Minneapolis one is Vermont Systems RecTrack. Does not appear to have an API, and I haven't been able to reach someone at the company, and that's what's powering most of their Parks and Recreation events and programs.
It'll be interesting when you change categories on people.
Oh my God, yes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Take care.